We are talking about Alexander the Great, whose age-old trace in history is indelible. His empire, stretching from Greece to India, includes over 100 established cities and thousands of pages of victorious battles. This testifies to his greatness. However, what was Alexander the Great really like? Some attribute to him genius, the status of a billionaire and philanthropist. At the same time, there are allegations that he sold entire cities into slavery. Where lies the truth in his words and deeds, and where does fiction begin? Ancient historians, who like to embellish events, presented them as the truth. We'll try to figure it out. Let's start simple. If you ask 100 people what country Alexander belongs to, 99 of them will name Macedonia, and they will be right, although only partially. In 356 BC, the state where Alexander was born was indeed called the Kingdom of Macedonia. However, in practice it was one of the many Greek policies, of which there were dozens at that time. Greeks lived in Macedonia, professed the Greek religion, and spoke one of the dialects of the Greek language. This situation is reminiscent of Sparta, which, although self-sufficient, was still considered part of ancient Greece. It was Alexander too who united these independent Greek policies into a single state, and this is considered one of his merits. So calling Alexander the Great is not correct from the point of view of history. In fact, it is not entirely correct to consider Sasha Greek. Alexander was born in the Kingdom of Macedonia, which for 500 years was a dynasty founded by Perdiccas, a guy with a sonorous name. Most of the country was inhabited by barbarians and had little in common with Greek culture prior to the arrival of Alexander. Historically, it was noted only as an inglorious annexation to the Persians, whom we, the Spartans and Athenians, defeated. In fact, the case was taken by the father of our Sasha, Philip II. He was imbued with Greek culture and began to unite Greece. Actually, this is the first myth, since it was Philip, and not Alexander, who conquered all of mainland Greece, with the exception of Sparta, at the Battle of Chaeronea. Alexander, having ascended the throne at the age of 20, only completed what he had begun. He crushed several rebellions and dealt with Sparta, and also conquered Thebes. By the way, not a very good event is connected with them. The inhabitants of the city belonging to Macedonia did not particularly favor either us or Alexander. They made large-scale uprisings in response to our actions. In response to this, the Macedonian authorities brutally seized the city and turned almost the entire population into slaves. The city was then sold to pay off his father's debts. Unusual behavior for a young man at the age of 21, isn't it? However, the fact is that in the past, young men grew up earlier. And there is another important detail in Alexander's talent, which has already manifested itself since childhood. Once, when his father was not around, the 12-year-old boy received an official delegation of the Persians and, instead of being interested in sweets, asked the diplomats questions about the roads of the kings and other military things. At the age of 12, Sashik tamed a powerful horse named Bucephalus and destroyed the right flank of the united army of Greek policies in the Battle of Chaeronea, being the commander of the 18th detachment. However, Alexander's successes are not only in natural intelligence. He received an excellent upbringing and, most importantly, education. One of his teachers was Aristotle himself, who was on excellent terms with Macedonia. The future king of Asia adored reading, mainly Greek literature, such giants of the pen as Homer, Herodotus, Xenophon, and others. They were his constant companions, and Alexander absorbed their works one by one with great interest. Many historians believe that it was the combination of military leadership skills and a love of science that allowed Macedonsky to achieve such success. Being a fan of the Greek philosophers, Alexander always acted unusually. For example, during his legendary campaigns, he always had with him a detachment of historians and other scientists. With each conquest of a new city or territory, he immediately sent specialists to study the area. He carefully listened to their arguments and took appropriate action. Thus, the inhabitants of the city belonging to Macedonia did not show much sympathy for Alexander and often rebelled against him. In response to these riots, the Macedonian authorities brutally suppressed the uprisings and reduced the cities to slave status. However, even at a young age, Alexander showed exceptional abilities. He possessed a unique talent and military leadership skills that helped him achieve great victories in military battles. In addition, his education, received under the guidance of scholars such as Aristotle, gave him a deep knowledge and understanding of the world. Alexander always showed an unusual love for science and art. He was always accompanied by a detachment of scientists who helped him explore new territories and understand their features. This allowed him to make informed decisions and act with knowledge of the matter. Thus, Alexander the Great was not only a military genius, but also a connoisseur of knowledge. His desire for education and scientific research, combined with his ability as a general, helped him achieve great success and leave an unforgettable mark on history. The results of his work speak for themselves. The cities conquered by the Macedonians, including Babylon and the city of Alexandria founded by him, flourished and became centers of culture and science. Alexander understood that military power could not be sustainable without the development of science and the support of the population. This he emphasized based on his correct education received in childhood. When it comes to the appearance of Alexander, we can refer to the Roman copy of the sculpture of Lysippus, which is kept in the Louvre. This is the only image of Alexander, created by nature, which has survived to this day. The description of his physical strength and agility is also complemented by his military exploits. However, the second key aspect of Alexander's personality was his morale. As a commander, he always fought in front of his army, fighting alongside ordinary soldiers. It was a beautiful but long extinct tradition. He was also known for his affection for his horse Bucephalus, with whom he fought side by side on the battlefield. Bucephalus lived to an old age, and in his honor Alexander founded the city of Bucephalus, which exists to this day, although the name was later changed to Jalalpur. These are just some of the aspects of Alexander's story that speak to his great accomplishments. His conquests and campaigns are described by a great variety of sources, and we will stop there. Probably everyone knows that after the conquest of Greece, the Macedonian went on a 10-year campaign, which became the most successful in history. This campaign began with a long-standing dream and resentment of Alexander towards the Persians, and according to legend, when he arrived on the shores of Asia, he threw a spear at it, symbolizing who would own the continent. Spoiler: this happened, and within 3 years Persia became subordinate to Alexander, who took the title of King of Asia and became the Pharaoh of Egypt. Macedonian became bored after the victory over the Persians, and he continued his offensive to India. In accordance with ancient tradition, Alexander did not know defeat on the battlefield. The fact is that no one has ever defeated Macedonian in battle. Particularly impressive was the Battle of Issus, after which the Persians finally capitulated. Alexander had about 40,000 soldiers, while the Persian king Darius III had almost 120,000. Nevertheless, the Macedonian won, losing less than 1,000 soldiers, which is 50 times less than the number of dead Persians in India. The troops were tired and nudity, so Alexander decided to return. Alexander the Great was extremely cunning and prudent. After the conquest of Persia, he did not begin to make significant changes in the state structure in the new territories. The structure of power remained practically the same. The same can be said about Egypt. Alexander showed special respect for the culture and customs of the conquered territories. He respectfully communicated with the Egyptians, visited the oracle of the god Ammon, and from the Persians he adopted a style of dress and imposed it on all his officials. In parallel with this, Macedonian began to develop new territories. He built universities, temples, and actively spread Greek culture. This contributed to the beginning of the Hellenistic era, which penetrated all of Asia and part of Africa, and which continued for several hundred years after the death of Alexander. As you can see from our video about Egypt, even Cleopatra, a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty that arose after Macedon, spoke Greek. The choice made by Alexander regarding the administration of new territories found a positive response among the population, which willingly accepted the Greek way of life. It is not surprising that the magnificently restored cities of Alexandria in Egypt became the scientific center of the planet, and even Babylon acquired a new grandeur. Of course, Alexander had his shortcomings. One cannot be called a humble person who named 70 cities after himself. He also liked to call himself the child of the gods and treated both Greek and Egyptian deities with respect. In addition, he had several wives, which was common and a tradition in his dynasty that continued for centuries. In addition, it is worth noting that the cities conquered by Alexander did not always receive loyalty and privileges from the new ruler. History remembers that in 334 BC, Alexander ordered the destruction of the city of Halicarnassus, and there were many other cities that were destroyed or sold into slavery. However, his competitors are rarely mentioned, because immediately after ascending the throne, Alexander eliminated all contenders for power, with the exception of his brother, who was mentally retarded. Alexander the Great showed himself not only as a successful conqueror, but also as a strategist and diplomat. He knew how to wisely use the already established state structures in the territories under his control. Observing local customs and culture, he sought to spread the Greek culture and way of life, which played an important role in the formation of the Hellenistic civilization. So, Alexander the Great, being a cunning and prudent ruler, did not change the state structure in the conquered territories, observed local customs and culture, developed Greek civilization, and left an indelible mark on history, paving the way for the Hellenistic era